Hello, friends. It's Carolina Moore, and I am here on both the Always Expect More page as well as the AllFreeSewing page. And today we're making a fun little gift bag. If you want to join in and sew along with me, you'll just need a fat quarter of fabric, and you'll want to cut that fat quarter fabric down into 4 pieces. And I've already cut my 4 pieces. The 4 pieces are going to be 5.5 inches wide by 10.5 inches tall. So that's all we're going to do is go ahead and cut 5.5 by 10.5, 4 pieces. Easy enough, right? So I wanted to give you that instruction for. Also, you'll need 24 inches of ribbon. Any ribbon is fine. I mean, not like wrapping paper curling ribbon, but any kind of like grosgrain or satin ribbon of any width, all will work. This is a super versatile project and you're gonna love this. So AllFreeSewing asked me to do a Facebook Live with them today, and of course I said yes because I love working with them. And they asked what kind of project I might want to do, and of course I'm currently addicted to bags, so I said I would love to do a bag project. And then I decided what kind of bag project to make. With it getting into fall and then winter are perfect gift giving seasons. I love that starting in the fall, we'll do things like porch drops among my friends, just a little gift, like a thinking of you, usually with a little note. It's usually not very expensive, but it's more about like the thought of, you know, you're in my heart and you're in my mind. Some people do things like they boo their friends and neighbors, putting together like a little treat pack, and the little tag says you've been booed. And then of course around the holidays there's things like dropping off cookies or other treats at doorsteps for holidays, and also for hostess gifts and things like that. So there's all kinds of reasons that you would make a really simple bag, and these are so handy to have and have handy. And when you make bags like this, they often get like reused over and over again, because fabric bags, they get dirty, they just throw them in the wash and dry them and they're good as new again. So they can get washed, they can get reused. They don't get messed up or crumpled, so you can use them over and over again. And for years, these bags will make their way around family and friends, and it's so fun to see them, you know, in circulation continuously. So we'll go ahead and get started on our bag. So as I mentioned, I have 4 pieces of fabric. I've just layered them up, and they are 5.5 by 10.5. And I'm going to use my really fancy screen technology of just bringing this down so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to box the corners on this. And what boxing the corners does is gives us a 3D bag. So rather than a flat bag, it gives us that 3D effect. I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you can box corners. I'm going to box one corner one way, one corner the other way. Obviously, you'll do both your corners using the same method, whatever method you have. If you just have a regular rotary cutter and ruler, you will use this method, which is you grab your ruler, and in this case I am cutting just a 1.5 inch square off of here. So I'm going to go in 1.5 inches, and I'm going to be really careful because I don't want to cut too far. That's going to end up with a hole in the bottom of my bag, but I want to cut as close as I can. And then I'm going to grab my scissors and just cut the rest of the way. Alright, these scissors are super cute, but they're maybe not as sharp. Okay, so there's one way of boxing a corner. I do a lot of bags, and so I box a lot of corners. And so I came up with an easier method to box corners. If you're interested, you can get a box bag template. I have these on my site. They are super easy to use. I'm just going to line up the 1.5 and 1.5 inch. There are little teardrop shaped cuts in there, and so I just cut all the way through and all the way through, and then it cuts that 1.5 inch perfectly. And I don't have to use my scissors to cut that little extra. So either way, if you use a box bag template for cutting your bag corners, your box corners, or you use a regular rotary cutter, both work. Obviously I have a preference, but I wanted to show you both just in case you didn't have the fancy template. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this over to our sewing machine. And today I am using my Baby Lock Zest. Often I have my Baby Lock Jubilant here at this table, but she needs to go to the spa. She needs a spa day. So I have my Baby Lock Zest with me today, and she's getting a moment in the sun. This is the most simple, no bells, no whistles machine that Baby Lock makes, which also means it's the least expensive. I don't have a 1/4 inch foot on here, so I'm going to eyeball my 1/4 inch, which is really fine for this project. My 1/4 inch eyeball is pretty good, but you can also get a 1/4 inch foot and put that on here. So what we're going to do is just sew that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and when we get to the fold, we're going to go backwards and then forwards again. And what that does, and I'll show you up close, what that does is that just adds some extra threads right here at the fold. There's extra threads, and that's called locking your stitches. And locking your stitches means that those won't come open. So on this end, I didn't lock my stitches, but that's okay because this is going to get sewn over. This end is not going to get sewn over, so there's nothing that's going to anchor those stitches. So we need to lock those stitches on that fold. But you can see on this end, see how if I tried to pull, that would come open. We don't want that for our bag. So I'm going to keep going. And we have 4 layers and 8 box corners. So we're going to box these corners and lock our stitches at the fold and go all the way around. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those in the comments. Let me know, and I'll try to get to your questions as we're doing this. The whole project takes maybe 30 minutes, and once you've made one, you can actually cut out a bunch at a time and make a bunch. And have them, these also make great party favors. Fall to me is like, the kinds of flavors of fall are like root beer and cream soda, and those are perfect things to leave on porches. Fall is also cider season, and I live in San Diego, and up in the mountains here, up in Julian, they have apple picking as well as some really amazing local ciders. So, however, some of those Julian ciders, they actually come in bigger bottles. So the size that we're doing, I'll show you a trick. The size that we're doing is for just a regular, this would be like a root beer bottle. It's just kind of like a standard size bottle. A Coke bottle would be about the same size. And if you measure it, it's about just under 2.5 inches. So we double it, 5 inches, and add a 1/2 inch for seam allowance. So that's why we made the bag 5.5 inches. And then this 2.5 inches, half of the 2.5 would be 1 1/4. So I just rounded that up to a 1.5 inch box corner. That's how I determined the measurements for this. So if you had a bigger bottle, you could absolutely measure the width of your bottle, double it, add 1/2 inch. So if you had a 5 inch wide bottle, you double it to 10 inches, add a 1/2 inch to 10.5, and then figure out your box corners based on half the width of the bottle. So that is how you would determine how wide to cut your fabric. And then the height is whatever height you want it to land at. You might want your bag to be a little lower and show more of the neck, or a little higher and show less of the neck. So this is, once you've made a couple, really versatile. All right, I've got half my box corners stitched already. So I'm going to go through and stitch the rest of the box corners. And making sure to lock those stitches at the end. And this machine doesn't have a cutter on the side, so I'm just using my thread snips to cut the threads in between. when you have a really basic machine like this, one trick so that you don't keep getting your needle unthreaded, which is a common problem that people have with a fully mechanical machine, is that at the end, when you're finished, you want, I'll lift this up just a little bit so you can see. So when you're finished, you want this piece right here to be all the way up to the top, and that will keep you from having the machine unpick your thread or pull your thread out of the eye of the needle every time you start a new seam. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that that is all the way up. So we have these. We're a third of the way done with this project already. It's that quick. Okay, so I have my ribbon, and for this fabric I'm choosing this 1-inch satin ribbon, but any ribbon is fine. It's a 24-inch length, and I'm folding it in half, and I need to decide where I want this ribbon to land. So I'm going to take my bottle, and I'm just going to tuck it in to decide where I want this ribbon to land, and I want it to land right about here on that bottle, on the neck. So I'm going to pin this in place. I'm going to show you, for example, I have this cute little cranberry juice. If I put this in, I wouldn't want the ribbon up there. I'd want it a little lower. So I'd pin it here. And then I have this bottle, which is actually an empty Snapple bottle, which would be super cute to like fill with like a favorite candy and tuck into a bag like this. And so for that one, the height would be about the same. But you can just tuck whatever bottle in, determine where you want your ribbon to land on that bottle, and then you're going to pin at the fold right here. So now I'm going to take my two of my pieces and put them right sides together with that ribbon in. When I do this, I want to make sure that I tuck this ribbon completely in. The only place I want it caught in the seam is right up here. So if you're worried about it, you can roll it up. If you have like a Wonder Clip, which I usually have one around here somewhere, and I'm not seeing one today, you can clip it with a Wonder Clip. I don't want to use another pin because I don't want to get little holes in my ribbon. Satin ribbon isn't as forgiving about that. I don't see any Wonder Clips. I'm just going to fold it in and it should be fine. Okay, I don't generally use a lot of pins, but I am going to pin down here where my seams come together. I'm going to line up my seams and put a pin where my seams line up, and that will give me nice pretty corners. So I'll show you that again right here. I'm going to take my two seams, line them up, put one seam allowance one direction, the other seam allowance the other direction, and then put a pin right there on that seam. And so that's 3 pins, one on each corner and then one holding the ribbon, which of course I've managed to unravel, but that's okay. Okay, tuck that in. I'm going to start up at the top and using that same 1/4 inch-ish seam allowance, I'm going to stitch all the way around. Pulling this ribbon out of the way. This is the outside of the bag, complete. Now we're going to do the exact same thing with the inside of the bag, except with no ribbon. So lining up the two bottoms with our seams. putting a pin to line those up. There we go. And then I'm just going to line up these top edges and stitch all the way around again. There we go. Pins back in my pin cushion so they're not just spinning around on my table here. So we have an inside and an outside. At this point, it doesn't matter which. Oh, I always forget this step. So normally we leave a hole for turning on one side, and I completely forgot to do that, which is not a big deal. I'm just going to grab my seam ripper and pick some stitches here, and it'll just be easy to do this now. One of those things about going live. So many steps to remember. There we go. So if you forget to leave your hole for turning, no big deal. Just grab your seam ripper and pick out, oh, about 3 inches is fine for a project like this. So I have that side seam just a little bit open. If I would have remembered to stitch it, I would have stitched all the way around to one side, stopped, and then started again here and gone again. And then no need to lock our stitches here and here because we'll be closing this up. So I'm going to take this lining, I'm going to turn it right side out. I'm going to tuck it inside my bag, making sure that that ribbon is out of the way. Because I don't want to sew that ribbon into my top seam. There we go. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did with those bottom seams, line up these 2 side seams, add a pin, line up the side seams on the other side, and add a pin. There we go. Now let me see. Looks like someone made a comment and it's not showing. So if I don't respond to your comments now, I will have to go find, oh, there we go. Yes, this video will stay on Facebook. So it's not going anywhere. You can absolutely come back later, like this weekend, when you want to make one yourself and make one this weekend. Or next weekend, or over Thanksgiving break. There's plenty of time. So I'm just going to take this underneath my sewing machine, and I'm moving this out of the way. Let me scroll back up so that I know that you can see. There we go. Okay. So we're just stitching, and this gets a little tricky with these pins in the way. So just go slow. Also, when you're sewing with pins, always pull your pin out before you sew over it. You don't want to sew over your pins. Like at best, it'll dull your needle, and at worst, it can actually bend and get into the guts of your sewing machine and ruin your sewing machine. And repairing the guts of a machine is an expensive repair that you don't ever want to have to pay. So I'm going all the way around. until I get back to the start, and then at the start I'm going to go back and forth a little bit just to lock those stitches. Bring my little handle up there and cut off my threads. So I can pull out the lining, find that hole that we made, and I'm going to take the whole bag and pull it out through this hole so it's all right side out. It's pretty magical. There we go. Now, I know that this side with the ribbon is my outside. I know this side with the hole is my inside. You can hand stitch this hole shut, but especially if you're making a bunch of them, I just fold it, find that seam allowance, give it a good press with my finger or an iron if you want, and then I'll top stitch this. So about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge or closer. I'll start before the hole, go back and forth to lock those stitches. Stitch past the end of the hole and go back and forth to lock my stitches. And then I'll clip these threads. If you have like a big thread nest here, just kind of tug on these threads until you get all those thread ends and clip them so they're gone. And if you look, no one's ever going to look that closely at the inside of the bag. So this is fine. It looks like I have another thread that needs clipping. There we go. So now I can take the inside of my bag and tuck it back in to the outside of my bag. Line up those bottoms a little bit. And then up here at the top, carefully with my fingers, I just kind of pull that lining back out so that I have the seam along the top. And you can finger press this like I am, just press it with your fingers like you would origami. Or if you want, you can press this with an iron, that's also fine. So now that I have that seam nice and pretty, and I've got some, there we go, just some stray threads. There we go. I'm going to stitch around the top, and this I'm going to do with about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And if you want really pretty stitching around the top, what you'll actually do is bump your stitch length up by just 1 or 2 bumps of your stitch length. And that longer stitch length just gives a prettier finished top stitch. And since the top stitch is mostly decorative and not so much functional, you can get away with having a longer stitch. So I'm going to go all the way around. You could like tie and bury your threads if you wanted this to look really super professional, but I'm just going to do a couple stitches back and forth where the two line up just to keep that from unraveling, and then cut all my threads. Okay. So there's my bag. I'm going to go ahead and put bottle in here. I'm going to take my ribbon, one on one side, one on the other side. And you can do this while your bottle is standing up rather than laying flat, or you can do it laying flat if that's easier for you. And then add a pretty bow. And then if we want to make our little ends pretty, I think I have some pinking shears here. I can just cut these with pinking shears. And that'll keep that from fraying. And I've got my perfect little bag. There we go. There we go. So I have my perfect little bag ready for gifting. You can again adjust this to any size you want. If you wanted the kind of ruffle at the top to cover the top of the bag, this was done at 10.5 inches tall, so 12.5 inches tall would completely cover the top of this bottle, and then someone looking in would be able to see like the bottle cap, but everything else would be hidden. So you can make yours taller. Again, if you have bigger bottles, you can make them wider. You could actually make this as big as a wine bottle and use it to gift a wine bottle if you wanted. But this is such a fun little gift to leave on a porch with a little note tag. It's great for party favors. It's great for like office gifts because, I mean, we made this in about 20 minutes. From start to finish, and that was me showing you all of the steps. So you could probably whip these up in as little as 15 minutes with just a fat quarter of fabric, and you can use fall fabrics or holiday fabrics or festive fabrics. There's some great Halloween fabrics. This is, by the way, Art Gallery fabrics in some fun fall colors, but Art Gallery also has some really awesome Halloween fabrics. So this would be cute for booing folks with little Halloween favors. So that's what I have for you today, friends. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure that you give it a like. Feel free to share this with your quilting friends on your Facebook as well. So you can hit that share button and share this as well. And hopefully I will see lots of wrapped up drinks and gifts this year. Thanks so much for watching, my friends. I will see you here, or you can find me on my YouTube. Just type in Carolina Moore and I'm there on YouTube, or on Instagram as Craftmore. And thanks again to AllFreeSewing for having me. In the description, there are a couple links, both to their newsletter and to my newsletter, so that you don't ever miss a thing. I'll see you soon, friends. Bye-bye.